and the stars of the movie, Michael Douglas, Paul Rudd, and Michael Peña. Welcome, gents.
No, you said that.
No, take it.
No.
We all good?
Thank you.
So polite.
I know.
You guys.
You're in Britain for 5 minutes, you're being polite, it's good. I want to start with a very hard-hitting probing question for everyone on the panel here. Did this movie give you a newfound respect for ants? And Peyton, we'll start with you.
Yes, I like to think that I've always respected ants, but that level of respect has definitely increased throughout the making of the movie. It's important to note also that no ants were harmed during the making of the movie in any way. Let's get that out of the way.
Until now.
Until this actual
But it's not when we were making the movie, so it doesn't count.
It's true.
And Mr. Douglas?
Yeah, I just never knew there were so many possible characters. You know, it was phenomenally interesting between working ants and flying ants and seeing all the different characters. And it was always a joy in the scenes when everyone wanted to take a brief respite to look away at some of the ant hills and watch them at work. Found it very peaceful.
Yeah. It's like looking at an aquarium.
Right.
Yes. Answering your question, yes. And I'm not trying to sound cute or anything, but when, even last week, I was standing by the sink and some ants started walking toward the coffee maker where I was making coffee. And maybe in an earlier time I would have just given them a little flick. Right. Now I absolutely let them do what they want to do, and I stand back.
Did you try and get them to make you the coffee? Did you say directly to the sugar bowl?
It didn't work.
What's going on with that? And Mr. Peña?
I can't believe it even made it this far for me to have that question. They've said everything about ants that I could possibly, I can't think of anything. Ants are awesome. Yay.
They are awesome. We've got a question here in the second row. There's a microphone if you just wait for it 2 seconds.
No, not you.
This question for Peyton and Paul, I guess. The film's had quite a protracted production history with Edgar Wright involved, and I really liked the film, and I was wondering if you could talk about the sort of changes you made to the Edgar Wright version, because he retains a screenwriting credit on the film along with Joe Cornish.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely start by saying, I think it's fair to say that none of us would be here, and there might not even be an Ant-Man movie if it weren't for Edgar and Joe, and that should absolutely go said. You know, the idea to make Ant-Man a heist movie structure was all Edgar and Joe. The idea of Hank Pym and Scott Lang as mentor and pupil, again, that was all theirs. And also the idea of a movie that all drives toward a third act where the big battle between the good guy and the bad guy takes place in a little girl's bedroom. That was always there from the beginning, and I stand by the fact that I think that's genius. I love it. When I came on, I really came on at the same time that Adam and Paul were starting to do rewrites on the draft. And really it was sort of taking what existed. Adam and I bonded over the fact that we were both kids who grew up reading those comics. I probably untold hours alone in my bedroom reading comic books. And same for Adam. So there were some elements that had been in the comics that had not made their way into the script that we wanted to bring to it. And then I think we also wanted to sort of take that heist motif, add more sort of the heist movie language in terms of the visual language of the movie. And then also it wasn't lost on me that, you know, Hank Pym in the comics is such a complicated character. And we had a very complicated man playing that character. We had Michael, who has made an amazing career out of playing characters. I think it's fair to say with a lot of gray area, and that we wanted. What is that? And really, it was to sort of just deepen that character, and the idea that always appealed to me from the beginning, that at the center of this movie are two fathers and two daughters, and that there was a lot of sort of emotionality to be mined from that. So, Adam and Paul worked incredibly hard in doing the rewrites, and then when we were in production, Paul continued to work with our production writers, Andrew Barrer and Gabe Ferrari, So it really was an evolution, but, you know, I have to say, I really think the spirit of what Edgar and Joe created from the beginning is still very much a part of the DNA of the movie. Sorry, Paul, I didn't leave much for you to say.
No, I think you covered it all.
There's a gentleman here in the front row, thank you.
Hi. Fantastic movie, by the way. Really, really enjoyable. Great job. Now my question is kind of to everyone. But, so when creating personalities for these characters in both acting and directing, how much inspiration did you actually draw from the comics and in as far as the personality is concerned? And, you know, if not from the comics, other places that you drew inspiration for the personalities?
Well, I may be sort of the resident Peña. I'm not sure. Like, were you a
Well, my guy, like,
guy?
there's no comic book that I know of called Luis. So it was somebody that, I'm portraying somebody that's actually lives in Chicago. He may or may not be a criminal, may or may not be in jail, I cannot say. But his name is Pablo, and actually I have a little video.
He may or may not have introduced himself to me at the premiere as your brother, right? That guy?
I can't believe, no, he's not my brother. And no, but it's this guy who I think is just funny.
Dude, I met cousins that I fucking never met from Christina's other side of shit, bro.
Oh my God, that really is.
It
really is. Look at this.
I'm like, I've been with Christina 20 years and shit. First time I met you. I'm like, you know what's going to
He's
take
still smiling, he's complaining.
Fucking happy shit, man.
He's complaining and he's totally smiling. And that's, you know, a couple times I think he said, I'm like, I think you're going a little bit too much. I'm like, no, I think it's, because he sounds kind of like a, you know, caricature.
That was key to your character. Was Luis is a character who, from the very first time we see him, some bad stuff has happened to him in his life. Obviously, he's been in prison, but, you know, his girlfriend's left him, his mother died, his father's been deported, but he's still so positive.
But I got the van.
He's got his van.
Nice van.
But that's such a rootable quality in a character is someone who, in the face of all this adversity, is so positive. And I think that's something that we really, throughout the course of making the movie, developed. Because Peña was so good and so funny in the
But it was
role.
just, I mean, it's just this guy. I mean, he's literally like, you can't make this guy up, you know? Like, I remember a couple of years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I'm like, hey, what'd you do this week? And he's like, I went to jail, dog. Who did, you know,
And Paul and Michael, do you want to engage, answer that question as well?
What was the question again?
What was the question again?
inspiration.
Oh, right. Well, you know, I mean, the idea of Scott doing everything that he does for his daughters from the comics, and that's the imprint we used for the film. You know, that said, when we were working on the movie and writing the script and all that, it's kind of thinking of it as its own thing. And I think both Adam and I felt like if we ever veered too far from something that doesn't make sense in the Marvel Universe or something that isn't true to the comic or true to these characters that have been created, that they would rein us back in.
And Michael?
Well, I was not a comic guy or kid growing up, so I didn't know anything about this. They were kind enough to send me the script of Ant-Man along with a leather-bound copy of 2 years of Ant-Man comics, which I could digest. And so we talk sort of like two-dimensionally about these sort of superhero movies, when in reality, as I was looking through these comics, my goodness, here's Hank Pym, very brilliant scientist, warrior, created this incredible factory, a building, the Pym Foundation, technologies, all of this. Wife was involved with him, lost her. I mean, there was more backstory for Hank Pym than any of the so-called, reality movies that I might have done. So I had a pretty good blueprint to follow.
Fantastic. There's a gentleman here in the second row. Thank you.
To Mark Douglas, as if you have not read so many comics in your childhood as we were, or in your youth, what did you read especially when you were very young? And then you entered the new world with the Marvel world. Before, as you have got the offer to do this, what was your thinking? Because this is a lot of of techniques and all that. And what was your impression after you have finished the movie?
I think I got all that.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I guess I was on the cusp of that television audience, so I did not go into my room to read comics. I watched The Lone Ranger, I watched Hopalong and Cassidy, I watched Howdy Doody. I was a television, black and white television fiend back there growing up. That's how I remember most of that. Other than that, the books are more like, Treasure Island and Tom Sawyer and that type. I was very excited about this opportunity when they came to me, because I never had done anything in this milieu. My entire career is contemporary based, not by choice, just I guess I'm just about characters, but so all the pictures I've done except for one in 40 years is contemporary. Never did an effects movie. So, I'm also a producer, so I was actually, really curious about how this whole thing went together. And got tremendous respect for Peyton, and keeping all these pieces together, because as we were filming, all together as actors, there was somebody else, there were units that were doing special effects, there were stunts, and there were also people just doing ant point of views, which was pretty phenomenal in the picture, and to be able to kind of juggle all of those pieces together was quite impressive. So I enjoyed the experience. I also have a great appreciation for actors who work with green screen, because there ain't anything there. And you talk about having to play make-believe. So again, Peyton was very good, and so show you what it would look like, so you get that impression of, that you weren't really overacting, that it really would be, all of that would be in place. And Paul was an anchor for the entire picture. He maintained, he was as steady as he could be, always made all the other actors around him welcome. He gave himself a lot of good lines, but he's entitled to that.
I never really thought about that until you said, I didn't mean to. Thank you, Michael.
Peyton, we know, was a comic book nut growing up, but Paul and Michael Peña, were you comic book aficionados growing up? Did you read Marvel stuff? Did you read other things?
Or did you have real lives?
No, I didn't. I read, I had comics, and I had some Marvel comics, but I was like a casual reader. I had a few. There was a while, I think I was kind of into the Hulk. Okay. I think primarily because of the television show, really.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
It was Lou Ferrigno. Yeah, and so I read some of the superhero comics and some of the Marvel comics. I read more English comics, actually. My aunt and uncle would send me these comics from here called Beano and Dandy. And I grew up with those characters and was, into Roger the Dodger and stuff like that. And so I probably read more of those than Marvel comics, and also Archie.
Uh-huh. That's amazing. Yeah, that is amazing. And Michael?
I didn't really, I grew up, poor, so there's not a whole lot of comic
The
stories.
question is, did you grow up? That's the...
Did I grow up? No, sir.
No.
No, but my kid's going to be 7 years old, and I started reading comics to him when he was 1. Not anything like The Punisher, but they have it on a really good gradient. With really kid-friendly kind of stories. And then, now I'm still reading him, he knows everything about the Marvel world. And before I left to go do Ant-Man, he just says, Dada, don't mess it up. Let's come here. Thanks, kid.
There's a gentleman here in the front row. Thank you.
Hello there. Hi. I took my kids to see the films last night. They were bouncing all over the place. Loved every single minute of it. It's a fantastic film. I've got a question from my 10-year-old son for all 4 of you, if that's okay. He would like to know, if you could be any insect, what would you be, and why would you be that insect? which is a lot nicer than the other one that my other son had, which was, do any of your cast members actually look like an insect?
Wow.
I'm not going to make you answer that one.
Let's stick with the first question. We'll start with Peyton.
I think I'd be a praying mantis.
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
Sorry. And some people actually said I look somewhat like a praying mantis, so that would be my answer. Sorry, Michael.
Oh, man, that was right on cue.
Let's see, what's a good one?
I gotta go, I'll be a ladybug, because everybody's happy to see you.
There we go.
A lightning bug, a firefly.
Shit!
I was going to say, man.
I tell you what, okay.
Fireflies in Chicago
Mike,
last week.
take
Thanks,
it.
buddy.
You could be, I'll think of something else.
I'll be a lightning bug.
I'll be a praying mantis.
Let's stick with the front row. There's a lady here in the front row, please. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a question for Paul. I just wondered whether you could tell us about the physical aspects of the role and how long you had to prepare and what you went through in order to get in such good shape for playing Ant-Man.
You're asking about his abs.
I didn't do anything fun for a year. I ate no carbs or sugar. I basically made health and fitness the focus of my day for a long time. I would work out with a trainer. I worked with a guy that was teaching me kind of tumbling and how to do flips and things like that. I was eating a lot of protein and vegetables, and I was eating at very specific times of the day, and I didn't drink any alcohol, and I was miserable to be around for about a year. No, I liked it. Actually, I found that I enjoyed having the focus. I knew I was going to have to be held accountable, so that made it a little easier, but I'd never done anything like that before to that extreme, and having the majority of my day built around that instead of making fitness something that I tried to work in on the side while I went about my day was really kind of great. I woke up very early in the morning. I felt really good. I had lots of energy, and it helped me also just get into the mindset of this character. I figured if I'm in really good shape, I will feel like less of an imposter in the role.
Let's continue.
Paul, would you take your shirt off for us here today? Who wants to see that?
He was just eating a croissant, by the way, this guy.
You want me to take my shirt off? Okay. Let's continue the tyranny at the front row. There's a gentleman here, please.
It's another question for Paul. As we sort of reach the sort of end in the next few years of the first generation of Marvel heroes, does that add an element of pressure to you going in as one of the newer breed of heroes?
I don't really think in those terms. I mean, the pressure, there's so many external pressures that you can feel if you think about it for 5 minutes. I'm just like worried about what I'm dealing with in the moment, and I want to try and be believable in this part, focus on this. I have no idea what the future holds. I'm excited about it. I'm interested in playing this part in whatever way Marvel sees fit, I suppose, but I don't think in those terms, really.
But I also think he was a founding member of the Avengers, wasn't he? Ant-Man?
He was in the comics, yeah.
Over here.
No big deal, dude. Walk it off, bro. Walk it off.
CGI going,
Actually, a question for both Michaels. Neither of you get to wear the Ant-Man suit in this movie, so next time, maybe? Would that be your hope?
Well, who's to say I wasn't wearing it, this picture? I myself saw me coming on a missile heading right for planet, for the big city. So I could easily have been in there. Maybe it was a blur because it was coming so fast. But,
point.
But I was, listen, after seeing myself CGI'd in the beginning of the movie, 30 years younger, which was incredible, because it was one of the scenes we were looping the lines, and Peyton said, you'll get a kick out of this, because they completed half of it. So it was a scene in the beginning of the movie, and I had these little dots all over my face, and I'm looking at it, and then halfway through the picture, the scene, it disappeared, and there I was 30 years ago, going, oh man, romancing the stone.
By the way, I watched that 2 days ago. It was on TV. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. It was so cool.
No,
So great to see that again.
I mean, I'm thinking I'm all for a prequel myself. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Michael might have actually inquired about purchasing the company that did that.
And Michael, did you want to don the suit?
Well, I mean, it would be great to wear that suit, probably not after Paul, not right after Paul, but like, that makes sense.
We would have it cleaned for you, Mike.
Oh, okay, thank you, buddy, I appreciate it. Swapping suits.
There's a gentleman in the fifth row, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing Ant-Man to the screen. Love the film. Over here.
Oh, okay, sorry, man.
It's a twofold question for Mr. Reed. I was wondering, does your heist movie signal will this be a trend in the Marvel universe going forward, sort of a much more subgenre style of film? And secondly, you mentioned your love of comics and reading them when younger. Can you tell me some of your favorite stories, not just character-based, but actual stories?
Yeah, well, with the first question, I don't know if this signals a trend in Marvel. I think they've always done these sort of subgenres, and I think that's one of the things that keeps the Marvel movies so interesting. I mean, when you look at last year, Captain America Winter Soldier owes to sort of a 70s political thriller, like a paranoia thriller, and Guardians of the Galaxy, which came out the same year, is this crazy gonzo space opera. And our movie happens to have the structure and feel of a heist movie, and I think that's one of the things Marvel's really done is, you know, sometimes you'll talk to Kevin Feige, it's like, well, we don't make superhero movies, we make genre movies. And I think it's been a very smart thing. In terms of the second thing, I was always, in terms of the comics, I always loved the original Hank Pym, you know, right around, 62 on up, the original Avengers comics. I love the relationship between Hank and Janet, the fact that they were an amazing superhero duo, but also the romance between those two characters was always fascinating. And then also the fact that Hank Pym, there's a little bit of schizophrenia and maybe a little bit of, he had an inferiority complex, because in the Avengers, he was fighting alongside Thor and Hulk, and he always felt inadequate, and as we know in the comics, he changed his identity a lot, and I always found that fascinating. So those early years to me were great.
There's two questions here from the second row.
Hello. The Marvel movies always have quite a light touch to them. There's always a lot of comedy, but this in particular is extremely funny. Is this something you guys are going to continue with? Is Ant-Man going to stay lighter? And I mean, there were kids behind me that were cackling like witches in a quiet way. Or are you going to go a little darker maybe? Or, I mean, yeah, the tone really. What's your plan?
Is that for Peyton? Anyone? Okay.
Where's Kevin Feige?
Well, listen, I'm hoping that audiences will respond to this movie, and if we're fortunate enough to be able to make another Ant-Man movie, I think there's a lot of story left to tell with these characters, and I think there's also a freedom at Marvel to kind of tonally do whatever we think is best, what serves the story best. So this one happens to be a highly comedic heist movie in terms of its structure and tone. I think there's a portion of Ant-Man that will always have a comedic component to it, but I like the idea that we could, and invent an entirely different feel for a sequel if we're fortunate enough to be able to do one.
Ant-Man 2 will be like a Bergman film. Very quiet.
We're going to do it black and white. We're going to shoot in Sweden, and it's going to be all about God's silence.
In acknowledgement of Evangeline Lilly, who's not with us today, who's 8 months preggers. Preggers. He's traveling, is doing very well, but for those of you who stayed till the very end credits, I thought there was also a little taste of what might be coming.
Absolutely, and there's another question in the second row, please.
And this question is actually extraordinarily similar to the previous question, but I would like to know what themes you'd like to explore in Ant-Man 2, because obviously the comics are very rich. What kind of themes and where would you like to take your specific characters if there was to be an Ant-Man 2?
Let's start with Michael on the end, and then we'll work our way down.
Oh man, I really thought it was for you. I wasn't paying attention. Just wing it. No, so I would like, I personally would like, you know, of course, I'm like, if you're in a Marvel movie, you want to be some kind of superhero, and, you know, but who knows, you know what I mean? That's all from, I'm sorry, what? This is my time. No, I'm just kidding. You know, but it's all up to Marvel. I'll remember that, lady.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've had thoughts of where it could go, things that might happen, but it's so embryonic, and I've had no conversations with anybody about it. I don't know. But like Peyton said, it would be a thrill to get the opportunity to start exploring some of that.
Mm-hmm. And Michael?
I have no comment. I don't know anything. I signed on for this one. I haven't even looked past this. I wish we had Kevin Feige.
Well, he wouldn't say anything either, though. He'd blame it on Marvel.
I happen to have a chart that I think I left it up in my room. No, but I think we get to the end of this movie, and there are a lot of questions at the end of the movie about what may or may not happen with these characters. I mean, in terms of Scott Lang, he's become Ant-Man for the purposes of this heist, but what next, you know? There are definitely some hints in the movie, and we also know that Paul is going to appear as Scott Lang in Captain America Civil War, which is very exciting. And if you could have heard Paul's voice when he finished his first day of shooting on the movie, you were very excited.
I was. Well, I saw Iron Man in person.
That's impressive.
And Captain America. It was weird. It was it made this whole thing seem real in a way that it wasn't even real for all of us. I think, and kind of shooting in a bubble when we did this, and then it was like, oh my God, I've seen them. I've seen all of them in movies.
But I think also, you know, I'll speak for Evangeline, who's not here, but, you know, Hope's arc in this movie is every bit as important as Scott's. I mean, she really, in this movie, and particularly at the end of the movie, she's going to finally have her chance to be a hero as well, and I think it's exciting to imagine what might happen with her. And as far as Hank Pym, you know, the things that happened in this movie, he had been obsessed in the past with exploring the quantum realm and trying to figure out if he could save his wife, and wasn't able to. But there are things that happen at the end of the movie that might reignite that obsession. And it remains to be seen if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Who knows? But
I think it's a good thing.
We have time for one last question from this gentleman here in the second row.
My question is for Paul. I was wondering, hi.
Hi.
I was wondering, Captain America Civil War, what's the scale going to be like? Like how much war is there going to be in a Civil War?
There's a lot of war, but it's a civil war. Too extreme.
And on that bombshell, a good note on which to end. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, Michael Douglas, Paul Rudd, Michael Peña. Thank you.
Thank you very much.